How's it going, everyone? It is Anime Outlet, and this is part 1 of What If Manga Deku Went Back in Time. And now, before we begin, I would just like to ask you all to please put your what if suggestions down in the comment section below. Also, since this is a manga Deku sort of what if, and he's going to be going back in time, I just want to give a small spoiler alert, as I'm basically just going to be telling what types of quirks Izuku unlocks in the manga so far. So if you don't care, continue watching, and if you do care and you don't want all of the quirks that he unlocks to be spoiled, then click off of the video. And now, let's begin. This is it, Shigaraki. You're not gonna come out of this alive. That's where you're mistaken, Izuku, Shigaraki would say, as all of a sudden a portal would open up right underneath Izuku's feet, as he starts to fall right through the portal. He looks up at Shigaraki, reaching out towards him to hopefully try to grab him, to defeat him once and for all, however he couldn't. As Izuku falls through the portal, his body starts to contort and shift into something else that just wasn't him. And all of a sudden, Izuku wakes up from his bed as if he just had a dream. Looking down at his hands, he realizes that he's now just only 4 years old. A bit more context of this, Izuku was just fighting Shigaraki after years of trying to capture him and hunt him down. But Shigaraki had made a portal underneath him, causing him to go back in time and jump into a different timeline, causing Izuku to be thrown right into the 4-year-old Izuku's body that was in this timeline. As Izuku, now with all of the memories and even the quirk that he had, he'd just be looking at his hands, just wondering, was it all just a dream or was it real? No, it was too vivid to be just a dream. It was too lifelike. So, that means I should have a quirk, Izuku would say to himself, using One For All at a tiny little percent of its power, just around 0.01% of its power, as red streaks go up and down Izuku's arms as a tiny little flash of lightning occurs before Izuku stops breathing heavily, as that was already so much power for just a tiny 4-year-old. So Izuku runs to his mother and asks him what day it is. She says it's June 16th, just one day after his birthday. Izuku, he thinking, wait, so that means I'm quirkless, right? Izuku would say as Inko would only look down at him, thinking, did all the just sadness and sorrow that Izuku had been just given the day before on his birthday, saying that he didn't have a quirk, just disappear out of his mind when he went to bed? I'm sorry, sweetie, but no, you don't have a quirk. Izuku would sit down for a second before thinking. Standing up, he would declare that he had a quirk, as Inko would only stare down at Izuku, shaking her head. I'm sorry, Izuku, but the doctor said you don't have a quirk. I just don't see how you could have just gotten a quirk out of nowhere within a day. That's where you're wrong, Mom, Izuku would say happily before jumping up in the air. As he would jump up, all of a sudden he would stand there floating mid-air, as Inko would stare just in complete awe. What? How do you have a quirk? This just doesn't make any sense, she would say as her entire body would start to shake. She would quickly go and grab Izuku's hand before throwing him into the car, as she would start to speed off right back to the doctor, as Izuku would only just be smiling off, knowing that there's fate of being sad. Izuku just not having a quirk, sad for him, was now just diminished, as he now had plenty of quirks, exactly 6 of them in fact. So it would just be flying throughout this car, twist and turn round the corners until she finally made it to the quirk doctor's office. Throwing open the door, she would demand to see the doctor. She would rush out, wondering what all the commotion was. Doctor, you just said my son was quirkless. Well, then explain this, she would say, pointing on towards Izuku, who would then hop in the air, now floating, as the doctor would look on just in shock as well. That's quite the anomaly. I presume we were wrong. We were wrong about your little Izuku then. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry for all the stress I might have caused you and little Izuku. But I'm extremely sorry once again. But I'm extremely busy now. Can you please leave and not stress out any of the other visitors here either? Inko would shake her head, explaining that she was sorry, the doctor, and would then leave, as she would then rush back towards her house, getting Izuku ready for school, before she would then just fly off towards school again, as the entire interaction of Izuku saying at a cork and going to the court doctor's office all happened within 30 minutes. So with Izuku now back at school, everyone would be staring at him, laughing about how he didn't have a cork and this and that from the day prior. However, Izuku would then just smile. He can rewrite his own history. He doesn't need to just be this corkless little kid anymore, someone who was just a punching bag for all of the other kids. But you're mistaken, guys. I do have a cork. Bakugo would walk up to Izuku, placing a hand onto Izuku's shoulder. Come on, Izuku. No need for all of that nonsense. We all know you don't have a cork. Just stop lying to yourself. You know it's not good for you. But Bakugo, I do have a cork. Just look at this. Once again, just like he had demonstrated towards his mother and the doctor, Izuku would jump in the air before floating, as all of the class would look on just in complete awe. Whoa, you can fly? You're just like some of the superheroes in the comics. That's awesome! Many of them would say, as Izuku only just laugh. Yeah, I guess it is kind of awesome. He would say, as all of the kids laughed before some of them would even put their hand under Izuku, just as if, was he really flying? And he was. They would all awe at Izuku just saying how cool his quirk was. However, Bakugo would start clenching his fists. How dare Izuku take away all of his attention? That was his attention, rightfully his. He owned it after all. He owned all of it. How could Izuku just come in and steal it away from him? Bakugo would shake his head before showing everyone else his quirk. As we now cut forward a week, we see Izuku stretching before running around the playground. He knew he'd have to start early if he wanted to use One for All to its fullest potential, as he couldn't just use One for All, as he was a weak little 4-year-old, and if he really wanted to become strong, he was going to have to start training early. And so he would start to run around the playground, doing as many push-ups as his tiny little body could do, then doing sit-ups until he passed out, as he'd be doing these on the playground every day for recess before going back home, eating dinner, and then doing them until he passed out at night, sleeping, waking up, going to school, just doing that, running around the playground, coming back home, eating dinner, doing push-ups and sit-ups until he passed out every single day, day in and day out. Izuku's determination to become a hero was higher than ever. Izuku alone knew he was going to become a hero with all of his quirks. However, he knew that he couldn't just use them without training, so he would train his body to be able to manage them, and every single day he'd be able to unlock just a tiny little bit of One for All, or a tiny little bit of, say, Black Whip or Danger Sense or Smokescreen, as Izuku would continue on doing this. However, by the time he was 10, Izuku realized something. He was going to have to meet up with All Might, as this was right around the time that All Might's injury happened, as Izuku would tell his mother to please drop him off at the UA high school. She would wonder why Izuku wanted to be dropped off there, but really couldn't question the prodigy, as Izuku, keeping all of his smarts with him, was just a complete prodigy in school, to the point that almost everyone in the entire city has heard about the extreme smarts and just heroism that was Izuku, to the point where some hero agencies had even contacted Inko to ask if they could take Izuku for just 5 years until he could go into UA high school, so that they could train Izuku to become the next greatest hero. However, Izuku would tell his mother that he didn't want to do this. He wanted to spend more time with her, as he couldn't just leave her for 5 years, as she was his own mother after all. That just wouldn't make any sense. So, with Inko trusting the young prodigy, she would drop him off at the high school before waving goodbye, as Izuku would then hop over the gates, causing all of the alarms to sound. As Izuku would start to stroll in, Nezu and Aizawa would come racing down, as they would then see the young Izuku. Well, not Aizawa, as he's not old enough yet to be a teacher there. Well, at least I don't think he is. So, Nezu would come racing down with some of the other heroes there, as they would then see the young Izuku. Well, actually, yes, Aizawa. So Aizawa and Nezu come racing down as they see the young Izuku standing there. Aizawa would then just facepalm before saying, "Kid, what are you doing here? Oh, do you guys happen to know where All Might is? I know he's not working here yet, but I need to speak with him." Izuku would say, now his voice getting serious. Nezu would look at Izuku before asking, "What do you need to speak with him about, Izuku?" Nezu had fully known who Izuku was, having heard about the prodigy. "I have to warn him about something. In exactly 1 week's time, he's going to fight All for One. And then he's going to get severely injured, causing him to not be able to use his quirk One for All to its fullest extent." Nezu and Aizawa would take a double take before asking Izuku, "How do you know about One for All and All for One?" "It's quite hard to explain. Just please get me All Might before it's too late." Nezu would get out his cell phone before calling up All Might, who would come racing down to Yuhei. As Nezu had said, it's important matters. As All Might would come racing in, he would then see the young child standing there before Izuku would walk up to All Might. Izuku would put out his hand before saying that his name was Izuku Midoriya. All Might would shake the tiny hand, or just asking why he needed him to come here. "Well, All Might, I'll explain more about this in 5 years, but I'm the successor of One for All. You don't really need to know about that right now, as that's not really important. In exactly 1 week's time, you are going to get into an unavoidable fight with All for One, where you get severely injured, and this causes you to have a massive injury right at around the top or middle part of your chest. And I'm coming here to warn you about that. So, in exactly 1 week's time at 3 p.m., you cannot go out and do heroing, as you're going to encounter All for One. Yes, you are going to injure him, but it's far too risky for you to injure him as well." All Might would look down towards the boy before just blowing it off. How could this small child really he's spouting nonsense? He would look over towards Nezu and Aizawa before jumping off, shaking his head just in confusion. All of this really just confused All Might's brain. So, in exactly 1 week, Izuku would be watching the TV, as all of a sudden, Izuku would hear an explosion from miles away. As Izuku would go over, open the door before staring down at his mother. "I'll be back in a couple minutes, Mom," Izuku would say, as Inko would worriedly look over towards Izuku. "Oh, okay, Izuku, please don't get hurt. It stresses my little heart out way too much when you come back injured. Okay, please don't get hurt." Izuku would only smile before saying, "Oh, trust me, Mom, I won't," Izuku would say, now mad that All Might had disobeyed his words. Jumping off, Izuku would end up finding where All Might was, as he would start to fly off towards All Might using the tiny percentage of One for All that he could, just being around 10%, the max that his 10-year-old body could manage. As Izuku would reach there, he would use Black Whip, using it as he was angry, controlling it there as he would grab All Might right after All Might slammed his fist right into All for One's just head, causing All for One's head smash down into concrete, now severely injured. Right as All for One would get up, Black Whip would come in, surrounding All Might, picking up All Might, as All Might would then be sent flying with Izuku, holding him down below him, as Izuku would end up landing down into a dirt field, throwing All Might down, yelling at All Might that he was just about to get injured, and that he's lucky he pulled him out right away. All for One, sensing that All Might wasn't going to come back, would create a portal before going back to get instant healings from just the quirk doctor who would be helping him and just creating all of the Nomus, just his most trusted advisor. Zuko, staring down at All Might, would then just blow All Might off, leaving, letting All Might stand there, just breathing heavily after fighting with his nemesis, All For One. As Zuko would be jumping off, he would then end up making it back to his house, as we now cut forward 5 years. Zuko would be sitting inside his middle school classroom, as the teacher would then walk into the room. "Good morning, class! I know all of you want to be heroes, don't you? And it even excites me that 2 of you want to try out for UA. That's quite impressive of all of you. It's Bakugo Katsuki and Izuku Midoriya," he would say, proclaiming loudly, as all of the students would look on towards Izuku and Bakugo, many of them looking towards Izuku, nodding their heads in approval. "Yeah, Izuku's gonna make it into UA. There's no chance he doesn't. He's the strongest one out of all of us. He's insane," many of them would think, as many of the students would nod their heads. However, once they turned to Bakugo, many of them would nod their heads again. Yeah, but Bakugo's attitude problem really would hold him back as a hero. Bakugo would stand up in his desk yelling, "The hell did you damn extra say?" He would say towards them, as they would only just stare blankly at him. See, there's my point. Bakugo really had no power to stand on, as with Izuku being there, he made sure that bullying just wasn't a problem at all. And so Bakugo, just not having any leverage to just bully everyone, to make them scared of him, everyone really just would look at Bakugo just like an angry little puppy or something. So Izuku would be walking home from school, as just as on time, a sludge villain would end up appearing out of nowhere. As the sludge villain would come to attack Zuko, Zuko would turn around, sensing that the sludge villain was right behind him, winding his fist back, now being able to wield just about 30% of One For All, slamming his fist in the air, causing air pressure to be sent flying into the sludge villain, as it would then explode, shattering all throughout the walls. As this would happen, All Might would then jump out of the sewer drain, looking for the sludge villain. "Young boy, do you happen to know where a sludgy-looking thing happens to be?" "Oh, yes, All Might, the sludge villain, he's right there, a little bit's over here." As All Might would look around all throughout where Zuko's pointing, just seeing the sludge scattered all throughout the walls. "He did attack me first, so it is basically self-defense." All Might would look on towards the boy before thanking him for being able to stop him and just allowing him not to use up his quirk even further, as All Might was already super tired from having to defeat many villains. However, All Might still doesn't have this injury, still basically in the midst of his prime. So when he'd go to jump off, Izuku would jump off as well, going with All Might as well, using Fajin with the kinetic energy quirk, allowing him to jump off at super speed, keeping up with All Might. As All Might ended up landing, he would look over towards the boy who would now be flying right in front of him. "Toshinori Yagi, I've got some explaining to do, don't I?" Izuku would say, as All Might would stare on towards Izuku. "How are you using Nana's quirk?" he would say, as Izuku would laugh. "Well, I inherited this power through One For All," Izuku would say, as All Might would look over towards Izuku. "What do you mean, you inherited it?" "Well, I'm the 9th user of One For All. All Might, you were the 8th, and Nana's the 7th. Well, I come from just in the future, possibly a different timeline. It still confuses me a bit, but I come from in the future, and I know everything about this. I was the successor of yours to One For All. You gave me your quirk. You have no recollection of this because it hasn't happened yet, and it doesn't need to because I already have it. I know about All For One, One For All, and all of this, so you don't have to worry. Just wanted to tell you it. And I also know you're about to start working at UA High School. So, just like to tell you that I'm the successor to One for All, at least from my timeline, that is. So it's good to meet you, All Might. It's good to meet you. All Might's still a bit confused, would just say, "Okay, kid. What's your name?" "Oh, it's Izuku Midoriya, the person that saved you from getting injured." It's this kid again. Well, why don't you go on home, please? I really can't deal with you right now. All Might's remembering the kid just couldn't deal with him, as he just really thought about Izuku being crazy. However, now with Izuku using Nana's cork float, it made him realize that all of Izuku's nonsense and words were actually kind of true. And so All Might just had a lot to think about so he just decided to hop off, allowing for Izuku to go home. 10 months later, and a beach now being clean, we see Izuku walking into the UA campus, staring up at the golden arches in front of him, looking on towards the massive 3D H-looking building. Walking in, he would walk into an auditorium before sitting down, as we now see President Mike walking out onto just the auditorium stand. "Good evening, examinees trying to get into Class 1A. It's gonna be quite the long evening, isn't it? It's already 9 p.m. at night. So, since it's this late, wouldn't it be good to give you all a 12-hour test?" President Mike would say, as all of the students would just stare on like, "What? What did he say? You're kidding, right? You can't just give us a 12-hour test. This just doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that?" Many of them thinking this, as Izuku would only just blurt out laughing. President Mike, along with the rest of the students, would stare at him, as Izuku would then stand up. "So, you did this so that we'd all be tired taking this exam, meaning that we still have to be 100% even while we're basically falling asleep. Well, you're not wrong. So I'll have some of these helpers pass out exams, and once you get it, you can begin. Good luck on these next 12 hours, and if you're caught cheating, just know you'll never make it into another hero school again. You won't even be able to try out. So, good luck," President Mike would say, as Izuku would get his test after having it passed to him, as Izuku would instantly fly through the test, as since Izuku being a prodigy, knowing all of just high school information at the age of 4, he would be put into special classes that made him excel even further, being the smartest in those smart classes, causing him to gain knowledge that he wouldn't have in the normal timeline. So with that, he would be just one of the smartest kids in the world even. So with him flying through this, he would easily finish it within 3 hours, passing it up, being allowed to go home at exactly 12 a.m. as Izuku to get some sleep, as the very next day at just around 9 a.m. he was going to have to be doing a hero exam, meaning that all of the students wanting to take the hero exam would have to take a 12-hour test, and if they didn't complete it in the 12 hours or just barely did, they just also have to go into a hero exam with very little sleep and being very tired. So as the day would pass, Izuku would get up and would walk off towards the UA high school, and is now seen stretching, as he sees many of his future classmates and other students standing there just very drowsy and tired. Izuku would ask them why they were so tired, as they would say, "How are you not tired? We just had to take a 12-hour test with no sleep. We're going into the hero exam. I'm so gonna fail." Many of them would say, as the doors would open, Izuku remembering what President Mike had said just all the way back when he was at this moment for the first time. He would rush off, now using 50% of One for All, some of the max that he can manage at this point. Rushing off, now using full count, would end up breaking through all of this, just smashing through all of just the robots, easily just defeating them all with such ease and precision, using Black Whip, pulling many of the robots together, punching them further. As Izuku would be doing this, he would jump up into the air, floating, looking for even more robots, calculating all of the points that he had gotten into his brain. Looking around further, he would end up spotting even more robots, flicking down, causing air to be sent flying down towards them, landing, smashing these robots into tiny little bits and pieces. As Izuku would be doing this, he would decide to sit up against a building. I might as well let some of the other students get some points after all. I guess I'll just watch to see if any of them gets hurt at all. As I've calculated, I already have 150 points, so I might as well just help some of them, Izuku would say. Dropping that down, he would end up meeting up with a brunette-haired girl. As he would end up introducing himself towards her, she would end up running off, just talking with Izuku. Hello, Uraraka. He would say as she would look at him. Wait, how do you know my name? Oh, my mistake. Lucky guess. Izuku would say, well, I'm Izuku. You, Ochako Uraraka, she would say, kind of confused. Oh, do you need any help with, defeating any robots? I've already defeated some, and I think I should start helping some other people. Uraraka would say, okay. If you can bring me some robots, that'd be nice. Izuku would nod his head. Using Black Whip, he would pull robots towards her, and she would then cause them to float before dropping them, as they would then just be destroyed. Izuku would say, well, best of luck to you, Uraraka, before rushing off to go find some other robots or some other people to help. 5 minutes later, all of a sudden, the ground would start shaking, as Izuku would end up hitting himself right onto the forehead. I forgot. He's probably stuck under some rubble right now, Izuku would think. Before jumping off, he would end up finding the girl stuck under a pile of rocks. Izuku would see the Zero Pointer towering over her, as it would start to reach its hand down towards her. Izuku, using Black Whip, would pull all of the boulders off of her. However, he would see that her leg was broken. He would use Black Whip, grabbing the girl before grabbing her, throwing her back towards him as he would catch her, putting her onto the ground, before he would start hopping back and forth, until he had enough energy built up. Now using Fajin, one of his quirks, as he would explode off right on towards the Zero Pointer, flying right through the Zero Pointer's head, causing it to be destroyed instantly, as the Zero Pointer would start to malfunction before finally falling down onto the ground. Izuku would stand up once again, looking on towards the Zero Pointer that he had managed to destroy. That took a lot of energy, Izuku would say, before looking back to see Recovery Girl tending to the girl's wounds, as she would then stand up holding her head quite tired, having just had to go off of no sleep and just be recovered by Recovery Girl. Over the intercoms, they would then say that they may now all go home if they are finished, and if they are injured, they will be taken to Recovery Girl's office to rest up for the night. Izuku would walk home, entering into his house as he would smell his favorite meal cooking on the stove. As Izuku would walk in, Inko would turn her head towards Izuku, smiling before asking him, "So, Izuku, how was the exams?" "Oh, I think it went quite well. I think I managed to get around 190 points or so. I'd say my chances are quite high of making it into Class 1A. He would say as Inko would then rush over, jumping into Izuku's arms, hugging him tightly. "Oh, I'm so proud of you, Izuku. I remember that first day when you said you were quirkless, but you actually did have a quirk. Many of them. I can't believe it. I can't wait to see you grow into a strong hero, just like All Might, just like you said when you were young." Izuku would just laugh. "Yeah, I can't wait to see myself turn into an All Might #1 hero too. Can't wait to count how many civilians and victims I save. I'm gonna make it my goal to save as many people as possible," Izuku would say, as Inko would only smile onto her son, so proud of what he had become. As this would be happening, 2 weeks would pass, with Izuku getting a letter in the mail saying that he had made it into Class 1A. Izuku would smile down at the letter, showing it to his mother, saying, I'm in. As another week would pass, Izuku would be putting on his UA uniform, walking on towards the UA campus after running out of his house, going towards his first day of school at UA. As Izuku would make it into Class 1A, he would easily remember the directions, although it was a bit foggy, having been exactly around just about 11 or so years since he had been in the classroom. So with Izuku flying through the halls, he would open the door before sitting down in his seat that he remembered he had. With memories flooding back into his mind, he would end up smiling, thinking, those were good times. As Aizawa and the rest of his classmates would slowly slouch into the room, so once all of his classmates would be in, Izuku would ask everyone to quiet down, and sure enough, Aizawa would slowly strut into the room. Well, I'm impressed. A good 15 seconds or so it took you all to quiet down. Quite the good time, I would say. So, anyway, please go down to the locker rooms and put your PE uniforms on. I'm going to be testing all of your quirks. Aizawa would say, as all of the students would nod their heads before flying down to the locker rooms, getting changed insanely quickly before making it off towards wherever Aizawa had told them to go. As they were now there, Aizawa would then show them what he wanted them to do. So, Izuku, you're Izuku, right? Yes, Izuku would answer. Here, take this ball and step into this zone. I want you to throw the ball as far as you possibly can. Izuku would nod his head before winding back his fist, now using 50% of One for All throughout his entire body. With that there, he would throw the ball as far as he could, sending it flying through 2,000 meters, as all of the students would stare on, just in complete shock. That's awesome! Can I go next? Then Aizawa would only look on towards them. UA's gonna be so fun, many of them would say. Aizawa, hearing this, would have his head violently turned towards the people that said that. Fun? Fun, you say? What about having to see some of your comrades or even victims of villains die right in front of you? Being a hero isn't fun. So how about this? The person that comes in last place, he'll get expelled, Aizawa would say, as all of the students would stare on just at Aizawa. Wait, you can't do that, can he? This can't be true. I just spent all 15 hours through exams to make it here. I don't have to go another 15 hours next year. Oh, if you get expelled, you're not ever gonna be allowed to come back. Can't believe I have to say that to you all. So, Bakugo Katsuki, you got second. Why don't you go up next? As all of the students would end up making it throughout the exams. As Izuku would be first throughout all of the testing, Bakugo would be around third, Momo in second, and Mineta would be in last place. However, Aizawa would sigh. Sadly, I see potential in all of you. So, luckily for you, none of you will be expelled. All right! Many of them would say, jumping into the air. As we see Izuku rushing back, we now see all of the students going back to the classrooms having been dismissed. Izuku going slow, walking back to his house. He would then be stopped by Bakugo Katsuki in an open street, as Izuku had been taking the long way home just to look at the scenery around. Izuku, I challenge you once and for all to show you that I'm stronger and better than you. And that is where part 1 of What If Manga Deku Went Back in Time comes to an end. I hope you all did enjoy it, and if you did, please consider subscribing, as it really does help this channel out, and you can even be notified when the other parts of this series do end up coming out. Remember to put your what if suggestions down in the comments section below. Thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye!